Hey there, and welcome back to the British Accent Podcast. I'm Emily.
And I'm Nick. Really glad you've joined us today. We're diving into something that a lot of people feel, but don't always say out loud, the belief that unless you're constantly doing, you're not enough.
Yeah, that pressure to hustle. To always be productive, always pushing, always chasing the next thing. It's become so normal that stopping, even for a breath, can make you feel guilty, like you're falling behind or being lazy.
But here's the thing, you were never meant to live in a constant state of striving. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to be still. And none of that takes away from your value as a person.
Exactly. Your worth isn't tied to how busy your calendar is or how many things you've ticked off a list. You're not a machine. You don't need to prove your value by how much you produce.
And yet so many of us carry that weight. That if we're not working late or grinding through the weekend or sacrificing sleep, we're somehow falling short. But what if we've been looking at it all wrong?
What if worth isn't something you earn, it's something you already have? Something that doesn't disappear when you're tired, or when you take a break, or when life slows down for a bit.
That's the conversation we want to have today. Because maybe you don't need to hustle to deserve rest, love, or peace. Maybe, just maybe, you're already enough.
And that's a hard thing to accept sometimes, especially when everything around us keeps telling us otherwise. Social media's full of people showing off how busy they are, how much they're achieving. And it's easy to feel like you're not doing enough in comparison.
Yeah, it's like we've romanticized burnout. We've turned exhaustion into a badge of honor. As if the more drained you are, the more committed, successful, or worthy you must be. But really, all that does is push us further away from ourselves.
And from each other. Because if we're all constantly performing productivity, when do we actually connect? When do we sit still, breathe, and feel something without turning it into content or a task?
And not just feel joy or excitement, sometimes it's just about letting yourself feel tired, or uncertain, or overwhelmed, without judging it. Without telling yourself to power through, or keep going, when what you actually need is to pause.
You know what's interesting? Some of the most meaningful moments I've had weren't when I was working the hardest. They were when I let go. When I stepped away from the pressure and allowed myself to just be a person again. Not a project. Not a performance.
That's the thing. Hustle can be useful, sure. But it shouldn't be your identity. You're allowed to have value outside of what you produce. You're allowed to simply exist and still matter.
And that's something worth repeating, because a lot of people never hear it. You don't have to hustle to earn love. You don't have to grind to be seen. You don't have to prove anything just to be worthy of a peaceful life.
And if you've spent years tying your self-worth to your productivity, it makes sense that stopping feels uncomfortable. That doing nothing feels wrong. But that discomfort? It doesn't mean you're doing something bad, it means you're unlearning something heavy.
Exactly. You're unlearning the idea that your only value is in what you give, what you achieve, or how much you can handle. And in that space, you start to remember, you're human. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to receive, too.
And it's not about never working hard or losing ambition. It's just about recognizing that your worth isn't on the line every time you slow down. You can take a break without falling apart. You can breathe without falling behind.
Because worth isn't conditional. It doesn't rise and fall with your output. It's not a reward for success, it's something that's already woven into who you are. Whether you're having a productive day, or a messy one, you're still enough.
And maybe that's the real freedom. Not in achieving more, but in finally believing that you don't need to. That your softness, your rest, your stillness, they are not weaknesses. They are part of your humanity. And they're allowed to exist without apology.
You don't need to earn your place in the world by working yourself to the edge. You already have a place, just as you are. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is stop, breathe, and know that that's enough.
And when you really let that sink in, when you stop measuring your days by how much you've accomplished, you start to notice something strange but beautiful. Life feels softer. Less like a race. More like something you're actually living.
Yeah. You stop waking up with that sense of dread, like you're already behind before the day's even begun. You stop going to bed feeling guilty, because you didn't do everything. You begin to trust that being present is sometimes the most meaningful thing you can do.
And when you let go of the constant pressure to hustle, you make room for things you used to rush past. A slow morning. A proper meal. A walk without your phone. Even just 5 quiet minutes to ask yourself, what do I need today? Not, what do I need to achieve?
That's such a big shift. Because you move from survival mode into something more intentional. You start choosing things that nourish you, rather than just ticking things off a list for the sake of keeping up.
And honestly, no one else can define that for you. Not your job, not your parents, not social media. Only you know what makes you feel steady and whole. And if that means stepping off the treadmill for a bit, that's not failure. That's wisdom.
Because sometimes the bravest thing isn't pushing through, it's stepping back. It's saying, I'm allowed to rest. I'm allowed to live gently. And I'm allowed to be enough without constantly proving it.
And the more you practice that, giving yourself permission to be enough without needing to earn it, the more natural it starts to feel. You stop needing constant validation. You stop looking outside of yourself for reasons to feel okay.
And in that space, you start to build something more sustainable. Not a life that burns bright and fast, but one that glows steadily. One where you're not always exhausted, not always chasing, but actually living in a way that feels good in your body and your mind.
It's not always glamorous. It won't always look impressive to other people. But it's yours. And it's peaceful. And there's something deeply powerful about living a life where your worth isn't on trial every day.
I think that's what so many of us are really longing for. Not more success. Not more applause. Just the quiet assurance that we don't have to keep performing to be loved. That we don't have to prove we're enough, we just are.
And when that becomes your foundation, everything else shifts. You work because you want to, not because you're afraid of falling behind. You rest without guilt. You show up for others without abandoning yourself.
And maybe, in a world that keeps shouting more, the bravest thing we can do is whisper enough. Enough effort. Enough striving. Enough pretending. You don't always have to hustle to be worthy. You never did.
And that's where things really start to change, not just on the outside, but within you. Because when you stop chasing worth, you begin to feel it. Not as something you win, but as something you return to. Like it was always there underneath the noise.
And it's interesting, isn't it? How so much of the pressure we feel was never really ours to begin with. It came from systems, expectations, comparisons, all these outside voices telling us who to be, how to live, what to achieve.
But those voices don't know your heart. They don't know your pace, your pain, your story. And they certainly don't get to decide whether you're enough. That's your decision now. Your truth.
And your truth might be softer than what the world expects. It might look like slower mornings, smaller goals, deeper rest. It might be a quiet life. One not built for applause, but for peace. And that's not just okay, that's beautiful.
It really is. Because it means you're no longer living for permission. You're living in alignment. And that's when everything starts to feel less like a struggle and more like breathing. Still effort, yes, but not a battle.
So if you're tired, really tired, maybe that's not a sign that you're broken. Maybe it's a sign that you're finally waking up to a different way. A way where you don't hustle for your worth. You remember it. You return to it. You rest in it.
And if no one said it to you today, let us be the ones to remind you, you are enough, exactly as you are. Even when you're still. Even when you're resting. Especially then.
You don't have to earn love through exhaustion. You don't have to prove your value by always pushing. You are allowed to breathe, to pause, to just be, and still be worthy of everything good.
Thanks for sharing this space with us today. It's always a privilege to sit with thoughts that matter, quiet ones, gentle ones, the kind that remind us we're already whole.
This is the British Accent Podcast. We'll see you again soon. But until then, go gently, and give yourself permission to exist without pressure. You're doing better than you think.